Ooh, that looks tasty. Welcome, folks, to the Hungry Gamers back with another crowdfunding preview, and today we are talking about Skull Tales Full Sail. And this is a game that is several years old, and it came out in what can only be described as a much maligned version because basically the rule book was very hard to parse and understand, and at the end of the day, one of the three phases, which I'm going to show you today, was close to, if not completely, unplayable. And over the years, they've been working on it, changing it, adjusting it, and they are now re-releasing it back on GameFound with updated rulebooks that are divided into three, and some other balance changes here and there, is my understanding. And they were kind enough to send me an advanced copy. I'm not fully clear if what you see here is exactly what you'll get in the version of the game from GameFound. It sounds like maybe it is, though there may also be some other changes that'll be happening as well, and I will let you know if that is the case in my final thoughts. Now, what this game is this is a pirate dungeon crawl adventure. And the game plays over three phases. Everyone is a pirate, and one of you will wind up being the captain. And you're going to be moving around from island to island, going on adventures, and there's a campaign book and a story. Then there's also the port phase, which is mostly where you're leveling up, but you're getting new jobs and new experiences and hiring new allies and all those kinds of things, upgrading your ship. Then there's a voyage phase where you're sailing around trying to get to where you need to be to do your next kind of dungeon crawl adventure, though of course this is in a town, so it's not a dungeon, but you get the idea. Now, if you are not interested in how this game is played, so I'm going to jump into my final thoughts, then you would have the timestamp on the screen right now. For those of us still here, let's talk briefly about the three phases of the game. And as I said, this is the adventure phase, and this is kind of the end of a game I've played. That's why it's such a huge mess out here. But I just want to kind of show what you're going to be doing, how things are going to work, relatively briefly. A couple things to know. One is you're going to have this board right here. And this board has this little dial that can go up to 3, and that's going to tell you what level of kind of random enemies there are when they show up. And you have this little track here. If you ever get all the way down to the end, then you have lost the game. And also, as it goes down, it will increase the difficulty on this little dial right here, making enemies stronger when they get to here and even stronger when they get to there. And then also, you're going to have different tiles. And usually you'll start on one, and almost always you will start on this tile here, which is you've kind of pulled up in your rowboat and you're going to get off onto the island. You're going to move through. And the way you're going to kind of move through the game is, as you go to different exits, like this one here, you will go to the stack of adventure tile tokens that you have, and you'll, whoops, I made a mess, but whatever, let's move this other way, and you'll flip one over, like so, C2, you'll go find C2, and then you would have to attach it to the board in a way, however you want, in a way that might fit. And then you're going to go into whatever the mission happens to be. And each character has a different setup. So here, if you were the cutthroat, you have 4 health, you have 6 action points, and you have 2, I'm going to call it luck. It's not called luck, I believe it's called inspiration, that you'll have as well. And these are mostly used to adjust die rolls, though it can also heal you and a few things like that. There's also on the back an ally version where you can hire allies so players can kind of control a second character that is not a full-on character. You're not tracking as many things. You'll see it has an ability that you'll be using during the voyage phase and an ability that you can use during the adventure phase. Over here you have your stats. This is telling you that when you do a melee attack, you roll 3 dice, 2 dice for a ranged attack. You have a strength value of 3, agility of 4, mind of 2, and perception of 3. And at the bottom it tells you that you start with 2 swords, and this is used as command points every now and then. And then down here, this is the salary that you'll get every round. Well, on this side, that's how much you have to pay to hire them and how much fame you'll have to spend to hire them as well as an ally. And there's a whole bunch of different things that you're able to do as you're moving through. You'll be opening doors, you'll be exploring new tiles, you'll be searching, you'll be fighting. All of these different things have different costs of those different amounts of ability points that you happen to have, and each character is slightly different on how many they actually have. But for the most part, you're going to move around and you'll be fighting things. So we'll just kind of move back a little bit, and I'll just set up my freedman right here, and I'll put him up next to a redcoat right here. And you'll see each of the bad guys have their own set of stats, And they have these other numbers here and the bonus down here for if you have at least 4 characters. And they have their AI over here. They're all going to do different things at the end of the round based on the die that you roll for each bad guy. But for the most part, I'm going to jump right ahead and talk about combat. So the Freedman here, if he does a range attack, he can actually throw his spear, though if he throws his spear, it'll actually be on the ground. He'll have to go pick it up later. It's going to cost him 2 of his action points, and to throw it, he's simply going to roll 2 dice and try to beat the Redcoat's agility score, which happens to be 2. And since I did that, I actually got 2 successes, so I would have actually hit him twice, which in this case would do 3 damage each and would take out the Redcoat. When the Redcoat gets taken out, you take a loot token and you put it down right there. This can be picked up at any point for 1 action point, and you'll get the treasure that's on there, in this case, 1 coin. But let's talk more about what you're going to come up against most often, which are opposed checks. So let's say I was doing a melee attack. In this case, the Freedman would roll 3 dice, while the Redcoat would roll 2 dice. And this is an opposed check, and you are rolling against their agility. So the Redcoat's agility is 2, so every die that hits a 3 is a success for me. And then they're rolling against my agility, which happens to be a 3, so every one of theirs that is a 4 is a success for them. And so we roll, and well, that's a total miss for me, and that's a terrible example, so I will do this like so. And so now, this one here is under their agility, so is nothing. These 2 are successes. Then we compare their successes to mine. Well, their 6 beats my 5, so that blocks that, and their 5 beats my 4, so that blocks that. I'll also say, had it been like this, the tie goes to the defender. But if we say had this, like so, then I would have gotten 2 successes and would deal my weapon damage twice. In this case, it's 2 damage, which would again kill the Redcoat. The other thing that I would get from the Redcoat is some fame. And I'm going to talk about fame a lot as we go through this. But fame is something you're going to track on your little tracker here. And in the first mission, whoever ends with the most fame becomes the captain. But you're going to be using fame to hire allies and also to kind of maintain your control of the crew. Because one of the things that can happen during the voyage phase is it's possible that someone who has a higher fame value than you can take the captaincy from you. It's something that is possible and that actually results in a separate little adventure that the captain has to play for being marooned. And so you'll be moving around, you'll be fighting things, you'll be doing searches. Perhaps you want to search an area where there are no bad guys. And so for that, you're going to roll against your perception, which in the case of the Freedman is 3. So I would roll 3 dice, and I'm looking for numbers higher than a 4. And I know that because when I look at the card here, it's going to tell me a search. There's no enemies on the tile or the room, and then once per turn, you make a perception 4 test. So my perception value is 3, so that means I roll 3 dice, and if I get one that matches a 4, then I will have succeeded. Then I go to the search deck, I would draw one, and simply do whatever it is that happens. In this case, some healing, but it might be an ambush, it might be treasure, etc., etc. Another thing to point out is, as you're playing through, there's a whole bunch of different things that might happen as you're going. So for example, my voodoo shaman here actually is armed with 2 weapons. And so that means I can actually attack with both of those weapons on my turn. And it's interesting because one of the things that this game takes into account is basically your arm gets tired. So if you keep attacking with a one-handed weapon with the same arm, it gets progressively harder and harder to hit. But if you have 2 weapons, you go back and forth, you don't get that penalty. Or if you have a 2-handed weapon, you don't get that penalty. But it's just things to kind of keep in mind and keep track of. Also, your characters have a dominant hand that you're going to have to be tracking. So you'll notice here, this dagger here doesn't take the offhand penalty. And so just something kind of to think about. Now, I'm pointing this out not because I think it's super important that you understand that specifically, but because it's pointing to the level of complexity of the rules of the different things that you can do. There's rules for jumping, there's rules for climbing, you can climb up on top of a building here, sometimes there's bad guys on top of buildings, you can push people off of buildings. The only 2 other things I want to point out is there is some magic in the game, and magic's done fairly simply. If you happen to be a character that does magic, like the voodoo shaman here, when you use a spell, in this case clairvoyance, it'll cost you a certain number of action points. For example, this one here would cost me 1 action point. This one costs none. And up here it's telling you where it goes on the cooldown. And every round it's going to move down 1 until it goes off the board, then you'll get it back. So spells, and there are voodoo spells and there are witch spells, and you're able to kind of learn more throughout the game. Only two other things that I want to point out regarding this whole phase. The first one is that as you're playing through, obviously you're going to have your scenarios, and they're going to tell you how to set up, and as certain tiles come out, they're going to tell you what's on them. But it's also going to tell you when you accomplish certain goals, you're going to go to the back of the book, and you're going to get your story. And that's how you're going to be finding things, finding what happens, and advancing the plot of the particular adventure and the overall campaign. However, what's interesting is, as each character accomplishes goals, they're going to take those goals because that individual character is going to get a bonus for doing it at the end of the game. And that really matters, because even though this is mostly a cooperative game, you are still selfish pirates, and so you're often doing things because you want to do them, and that might not necessarily help somebody else. Because what's important about being the captain during the adventure phase is you get to choose the order in which people act. So, for example, if there is a loot right here, and we have the voodoo priest, but the freedman is the captain, at the beginning of the turn, he can decide that he's going to go first, move forward, and pick that up. Or maybe there are bad guys blocking the way, and he's going to decide that, nope, the voodoo priest is going to go first, and so he's going to have to soften these up so then the freedman can step up and get the finishing blow and get the fame and possibly pick up the loot. The last thing is, at the end of the round, after all the heroes have acted, then the bad guys will act. And I mentioned that for the most part, you're going to roll dice, check their AI, and do whatever it says. But if there are no enemies out, then you're going to wind up drawing an event card. And some event cards, like this one here, the Will of the Wisp, only take effect if there is a cavern, like this right here, on the map. Others will always happen, it might be an ambush or something, while others will only activate if you have this type of tile in the game. And that's going to happen every round that there is no bad guys on the board, which is kind of going to push the game forward because mostly those are going to be bad things. Then at the end of the adventure, you've either succeeded or you have failed. If you totally fail, you have to start over. There's ways that you can kind of do a partial success, which means you'll continue the story. But you're going to move forward and you're going to track how much damage you're leaving with, how much inspiration you have left, and how much money that you have collected, as well as how much fame you've collected, because you're going to use that in the next phase. The next phase is called the port phase. And I'm going to clear this away, set that up, and tell you how that is done. All right, so now we're in the port phase. And the port phase takes place on this small board here, and each character, not ally, will be able to move around the board and, well, do things. And you're going to have a total of 20 time to do everything it is that you're going to do. And you actually have to be back on the ship, back here, before time runs out, or there are penalties and bad things can happen. And you're going to spend 1 time every time you cross one of these hourglasses. So if the captain here wanted to go from the ship to the docks, he would pay 1 time. The next thing that's always going to happen is whenever you end your movement in an area, then you're going to draw an event card for that specific place. But before I do that, I'm going to actually carry out my action here at the docks, and there are a whole bunch of different actions you're going to be able to do in every different place. But the action that I'm going to do first is I'm going to do my collect salary action. And so what that's going to do is that's going to give me, as the captain, 100 gold. And that's going to be money that we can use for the ship. And I like to just kind of write it down on a little dry erase card here so I can keep track of everything. But then I'm also going to get my personal money. Now the captain will always get 50 gold as his salary. On the other hand, characters, when they collect salary, they're going to collect whatever is in the lower left corner. So the witch here would collect 20. But captain's here, captain's collected his 50. And he had 1 movement for moving there, and then 1 more time for collecting his salary. And then he is done. So then we would draw a card from that deck, right here. And we have the Fisherman's Tune. Sitting at the end of the pier, you recognize an old fisherman. He's humming a catchy tune. When he sees you, he waves you over and you sit next to him. If you decide to spend some time listening to his stories, spend 3 time and make an intelligence 4 roll. And then if I succeed, I'll get something. So, let's go ahead and do it. I'm not very smart though. Well, my intelligence is only 2. We're going to try it anyway and see what happens. But one of them got to a 4, so I happened to succeed because I got 1 success. That's what the check is. If there's 2 checks, I would need 2 successes. I memorized a few interesting facts about life on the high seas. Till the end of the port phase, I reduced the cost for learning any voyage skill by 15, and 10. Now what that means is I might be able to go learn a skill because I have a discount. And I'll talk about learning skills in just a minute. And then that was 3 times. 1, 2, 3. Now, I'm going to do a quick pause rather than keep playing through this here and talk about some of the other things that you might be able to do. So it mentioned learning skills. And the way you're going to learn skills is going to depend on the specific character that you have. So for example, Cutthroat is a duelist, so it'll be able to learn the kind of duelist skills, while the captain here is Rowdy. So he'll be able to learn Rowdy skills easier than other skills. Everyone can learn everything, but it's more expensive the harder things that you learn. So for example, here, I could learn, as you can see, I can go see Grace Jennings and learn a shooter skill, but that's not the type of thing that I would want to do. So what I would want to do is go up here to the tavern where I can learn a Rowdy skill or a brawler skill. And that might be the type of thing that I specifically want to do, and it probably is what I will wind up doing. So that'll wind up costing me 1 to get here, 2 here, it costs me 7 time. So that'd be 10 more time, all the way down to 5 if I wanted to do that. Then of course I would need to get back, and so on. The other thing that I would want to consider doing is in my travels, I collected all of these things. I collected some sugar, I collected some silver, I collected tobacco, some food supplies, some prisoners, and some rum. And that's something that I'd be able to sell here, and then that's the kind of money that would add up with the 100 captain salary I got, and I'd be able to use that to buy things to upgrade my ship. New cannons, maybe a faster ship, more sails, more crew, all of those kinds of things. Now the other thing that's worth talking about, as we're paused, the other main thing that you're going to do is you're going to be buying and selling goods. In general, there is a supply of 8 cards that you'll be able to buy here at the market. And it's very simple. They tell you what they do, how many hands they take, and how much they cost. However, if you are the captain, there is this side pile of 4 cards that are only available to you as the captain to purchase. Then of course you can also always go here to the black market and draw off the top of the deck, but if you draw off the top of the deck, then you're going to wind up paying a bit more. There is the church here, which is where you're going to be able to remove curses, which is something you can be cursed. Oh, and I almost forgot, as soon as you arrive, if you have any rumors, which is something you'll be able to pick up here at the manor, then as soon as you arrive, that's when you will collect it. So for me, I actually did this last game. I gained 5 fame and I was able to remove my curse that I had had on me from the previous round. But if I didn't have that, I could have gone up here and done something to get rid of my curse up there. Here at the tavern, mostly you're going to get new allies. You can train some skills. At the manor, you're going to get rumors. And over here, as I said, you're going to be getting rid of curses, and you can also train some new skills here. You'll be able to get new spells here, brawling skills here, shooting skills down there, and then duelist skills up here. And that's mostly actually how this part of the game works. The only other thing that's really important to point out is here at the docks, you're also going to be able to get assignments. And assignments are things that your captain must do or you're trying to do during the voyage phase. And that's the next phase I'm going to show you. That's when you're traveling from the port to wherever your next adventure phase is. But if you do this thing, then you're going to get a bonus. If you don't do it, then you're going to get a penalty. Now, you don't have to do it, but it makes the voyage phase a little bit more rewarding if you do. Now, what's important here is everything that you do in this phase is going to cost you time. And so it's very important that you get everything done and you get back to the ship before time runs out, or as I said, there are penalties when you leave. But for the most part, that's it. That's how the port phase works. And obviously, each of these different locations you can stop at have different flavors of events that are going to happen. So that's how this phase works. All right, so now let's talk about the voyage phase. And so for the voyage phase, the campaign book has told you when, or I should say where, you need to go for the next phase of the game. And those are these gold tokens out here. And on the back of one of these gold tokens is a 1. And what's going to wind up happening is, and this is actually kind of set up for my own personal game, so I'm not going to show you, but each one of these gold tokens has a number on the back. And one of them is a 1, and that's where you're trying to go. So there's a 1, a 2, a 3, and a 4 in some order out on the border. You can't quite see the other one up there. Can you quite see that? Yes, you can just barely see that. And you're going to be traveling around on the seas trying to figure out which one is which. And there's a couple ways you're going to be able to do that. And for the most part, you're going to be playing basically a worker placement game over here on your ship. Also in the previous phase, I happened to take an assignment, and that was there's good salvage. And this merchant ship, I know is going to be going from here over to here. And before that gets there, I need to capture it. And if I do, the captain's going to get 10 fame and a bunch of goods. So it's important for me to do that. And it's going to be moving actually relatively quickly across the board. And you can kind of see its information up here. And I could sink it by destroying the hold, or I could slow it down by damaging its sails, or I could try to board it. And this here is kind of just telling me what the combat capacity of the ship is, meaning it has 3 things that are going to be able to fight me. So really, I'm going to want to actually board it because that's going to be relatively simple for me to take it over. And then, but really that's pretty much how it's going to go. Now, as always, I'm not going to go over everything because there's a lot going on here. What's important is over here we have this little clock that goes around. And every time we get to 5 or 6, it's going to be nighttime. Every time we go from 6 to 1, I'm going to have to feed everybody with my supplies that I have. Here in my hold, I have 3 sets of supplies. And if I don't, we will lose morale. And there's various things that will make us lose morale as we go. And if ever the morale gets to 0, then we have lost. And there's a kind of side campaign we play. Also, each of the characters, even the allies, will be tracking their fame or popularity or influence, whatever it is, during the game. And if at any point another player that's not the captain has their fame higher than the crew morale, they can attempt a mutiny. And I'm not going to go into how a mutiny works. It has to do with how much fame your character has, and you're then going to kind of take coins and kind of bid your fame, and then you spend it, and the captainship can actually be taken from you that way. But again, I'm not going to go into everything, but just understand that is something that you can actually do. So I'm going to jump right in, and I'm just going to play around or so and just kind of talk about what it is that I'm doing. Now, I also happen to have 6 crewmen that I have been able to get in the previous voyage phases and all that. And so these are all going to start just in the barracks here. And that'll matter in just a moment. And then I have my characters and my allies, and they can each do things too. So everyone's going to go ahead and kind of just place themselves out there. And so I'm going to go ahead and just have the captain is going to go right here to the helm. The voodoo shaman is going to go to the quarterdeck over here. The witch is going to go right here to the front of the ship. I forget what it's called, but it's going to go there. The forecastle. And just because we're not really going anywhere, the duelist is going to go here to the main deck. Now, here's how this actually works. The captain could spend some of his popularity to tell the crew, these other characters here, to go somewhere else if he wanted to. But in this case, he does not. Now, he's going to have 1 command point to move around the crew. But because the voodoo priest has a charisma value of 2, and the voodoo priest went right here, then I actually have 3 points that I can spend. Now, because I'm going to be spending that, that means that the voodoo priest gains 1 fame, or popularity for doing that. Then I'm going to use those 3 points to send 1 crew member to that rigging, 1 to this rigging, and 1 to this rigging. So they can potentially make us sail a little bit further. Then we're going to get into how it all actually works. So the voodoo priest does nothing. He's done. He's just giving his charisma to help out. Now, I'm going to find out how much movement we're going to have. And so I can get 1 die for having someone on the helm. And then I can get 1 die for each of those crew members there. So that gets us up to 3 dice. And the witch happens to have this wind mastery power, as you can see right there, which means we will actually get a 5th die. And you can never roll more than 5 dice in Skull Tales. And then we're going to kind of go through one at a time as this goes, and you'll see why. So first off, the captain is going to try to roll to see if he has success on the roll. And the number he's looking for is based on how much stuff we have in the hold. Since we are still in the green with our cannons and our supplies, as long as I get better than a 2, we will move. So a 3, 4, or 5. If we were up here, we'd need a 4, 5, or 6, and up here, a 5 or 6. So first the captain's going to roll, and a 3. So we succeeded. Since the captain succeeded, the captain's going to get 1 fame. or popularity. And I'm going to keep calling this fame because I'm a dummy, but just understand it's not actually fame, it's a different thing. Though it does convert to fame at the end of the game if you still have it, but we'll go over that. So that's one success. Then we have these 3 crew members, and I'm going to roll all of them, and they're each going to tick up 1 spot on this chart here, which means they're starting to get tired. And I'm going to go ahead and roll all 3 of these, and again, we're looking for, that's a failure, but those 2 succeeded. And then we're going to use our Witch's Wind Mastery, and again, looking for above a 3. So we can move 4. So now we're going to go ahead and move. And I can move on any of these arrow lines. So I can go here, 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 or for a point, I could rotate myself. Now, as I said, I want to get down there and capture this ship. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. Nice and simple, just like that. Then, because of the work we've done, the ship starts to get dirty. And we place that right there. And I know I said I was putting the duelist there. I think I want to put the duelist in the crow's nest instead. Not that it's going to necessarily do anything, but what I could do is I could use the duelist perception, which is 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. And if I was within 3 of one of the goals there, I could flip it over and see what was up. Now I'm going to come over to the forecastle, and the witch is going to attempt some cartography. And to do that, I'm going to roll her knowledge, which is 4 dice, and I succeeded in nothing. Now, had I succeeded, 1, I would have gotten fame for every success, but also I could take one of these gems here and put it on top of one of the goals. And if at any point I got 3 gems on top of the goal, I could immediately flip it over and see if that is where we were trying to go. But I failed, so I don't get to look. And then that would be the end of the round. We would, as I said, add our dirt. Then we would move into the enemy phase. Now, currently, this ship is neutral. So what it's going to do is it's going to simply roll its dice, which is 4 dice, and for every 5 or 6 it gets, it's going to move forward. And it is moving. So it's got 3. So it's going to go 1, 2, 3. And then it's going to slowly make its way on around. Then, because there are no active enemies, we would then go to the event deck and we would draw one from the deck. And we have Indomitable Swell. An ocean swell rocks the ship wildly. Move your ship 3 spaces in the direction the clock is pointing and disable a cannon. So the clock is pointing back this way, and that's based on this right here. So if it was down here, it would move me this way. Then we have, so I would mark one of the cannons as damaged, so I'll just take this and put that there, meaning I can't use it. But if there's someone at the helm, they can attempt a Strength 5 roll to ignore this event, and if they do, then they're going to wind up getting 2 popularity for it. Or if there's someone at the gun deck, they can attempt to repair the cannon. In this case, there is someone at the helm, and he has a strength of 4, so he's going to roll 4 dice. And he did not get a single 5, but he could spend his inspiration, which we will say that he will, so now he's down to 0, to completely ignore this event and gain himself 2 popularity. And so I chose to ignore that because I don't want to go this way because I'm trying to get to the ship down here. But if, say, it was facing like this, then I might have taken it and then tried to head the merchant ship off. And so that's how a day is going to work. Now, there are some other things that you can do. So let's just say that the ship was right here, running away from me. I could use my cannons and attempt an attack with my broadside guns. To do that, I would need to be over here on the cannon deck, or I could send a crew member there. Crew members have stats of 2 for everything. So they would roll 2 dice when attempting to shoot the cannons. Or, and you'll note there's 1 space here for crew, so if you put a crew member there, they're going to just shoot all the cannons. But for every member of the crew you have here, then they're going to be able to use however many dice that they roll. So depending on the character that you have, you may be rolling more than just 2 dice. And then as you're shooting at the ship, you're going to try to beat however far they moved. If you remember, this ship moved 3 spaces, so if I was, say, rolling 4 dice, every die that beat a 3, so in this case 3 is 3, would do damage. Then I would roll on a chart and see if I hit the sails, which might slow it down, or if I damaged the hold, which would get it closer to sinking, or perhaps I would damage its combat capacity, meaning its crew, and we would simply roll for each one based on the numbers right there on the die. And we would figure that out by rolling and looking at the numbers on the chart right here. The other thing that can happen is you can do boarding. And when you wind up boarding, you use this board right here. And the first thing that happens is you see what is the combat capacity. In this case, the combat capacity is 3. So I would take 3 enemies, put them out like this, and then each of the pirates would then get to place themselves on the board somewhere. And we'll just say we're like that. And then, of course, you can wind up bringing the crew over as well. And the captain's going to do that with his crew points. And so what will wind up happening is first all the pirates will activate. So if you have one of these pirates, you're going to roll an agility check. And if you pass, you're going to wind up over there, and then you can start attacking with your attack value that your specific character has. And for every 2 damage, you will kill one of these pirates here. If you ever take all of them out, then you have captured the ship. This thing over here does the same. The other thing you can do is when you're over there is you can cut these lines so you can separate the ships. If you're here at the swivel gun, you're very simply going to be shooting, and you're rolling the dice with whatever your value is. In this case, the voodoo priest has 2, so he might roll a 2, and for every 5 or 6, you would do a damage to one of the crew. If you're up here, you're going to add your charisma ability to one of the pirates here. Oh, every single group of pirate that you have, after all of your heroes have acted, they're going to get to roll dice to attack the pirates over there. And it's the same thing with the pirates over here. They're going to roll also. So let's just say that I had 3 pirates over here, and there are 3 of them there. And this is after all the fighting has been done. I've shot, I've done everything. Then I would go through. So they're going to wind up rolling 3 dice, because there are 3 of them. And they're going to succeed on a 5 or a 6, as we look at this one right here. And then I have this first guy will roll 1 die, the next one will roll 1 die, and the third one will roll 1 die. But because I have the witch here, and she has a charisma of 1, she's going to actually add 1 die to one of them. So I'll just put it right there. Then this combat happens simultaneously. And for my crew, every 5 or 6 that I roll does a damage to them. And as we see, nobody did anything to anybody. But let's just say that they rolled a 5, and I also rolled a 5, and sure, we'll say that they rolled a 4. So they've done 2 damage to me, and I've done 1 to them. So my 1 damage would flip one of them over. Then their 2 damage, the captain would decide where they go. So the captain might decide, okay, we're going to do 1 damage here and 1 damage here, and kind of divide that out however they want. If at any time a crew member takes its 2nd damage, it'll actually go immediately to sick bay, and you're able to get a pirate out of sick bay on the main deck, depending on what you're able to roll. Now, there are a lot of other things going on, but these are kind of the core things that you're doing. You'll be boarding ships, you'll be shooting at ships, and you will be trying to get to find and get to the island where your adventure is. And that's pretty much how this phase works. So now that we've kind of covered everything very briefly, though this is already rather a long video, let's go ahead and talk about the game as a whole. So what do I like about this game? And before I jump in, I'm going to say that I'm going to do as much nitpicking here as I can, because this is a game that really, I feel like, has a lot of people that really want it to be the pirate game they have been waiting for. And so I'm really going to spend as much time as I can talking about what I think really does work and where I think there's some things that miss the mark. And in the beginning, I did say that I was not completely sure if the core version of the game that I have was going to be exactly what the backers were going to get. And the answer is, yes, it is. I did send some questions to the publisher, and they confirmed that what you saw with what I have is exactly what you are going to get. And of course, I don't know what the expansion is going to look like. So just kind of throwing that out there. So I want to start with the things that I like about the game. First off, the minis are great. It wasn't easy to see with kind of the top-down view that I did, but the minis I think are fantastic. I love the sculpts. I love the positions. I really like the minis. Are they the best minis in the world? Probably not. Do I like them? Yes. So minis are great. Also, I'm going to say that I think that all three of the phases, one, they work. And two, I think they're pretty darn thematic in doing what you want them to do to get a complete pirate feeling. I think the adventure phase, I mean, you're having an adventure. You're going, you're fighting, you're searching, you're running into weird, crazy things that are happening to you. And I think that works really well. I think the port phase, port phase is one of my favorites. I really like the way the port phase plays out because it's quick, but you have some unknown with those event cards you're flipping out. You have objectives you are trying to do, whether it is the rumor cards or trying to solve one of the cards that you've kind of drawn from a deck of cards based on where you are, or you're getting to a point like, I have to go buy equipment, so I have to get here, or I need to learn a new skill, but learning the skills takes a lot of time, so I got to get there, I got to get out. There's things that you need to do, and that time crunch you're under is real, and I think is very satisfying and frustrating in the best ways at the same time. And then the voyage phase, I also think actually works pretty darn well. You definitely have a good vibe of kind of running a ship. And because this game is set up and I hesitate to say semi-co-op, because it's pretty darn co-op. But in this somewhat semi-co-op way, you really do feel that as pirates, like, this is more useful for me, what I want to do now. This is what I'm going to go do. And the captain can be like, absolutely not. Go do this thing. And that option is there. And then, of course, you have the crew that are going around, the crew that are going to get tired, and they're doing most of the grunt work for you. And I just think that really works well. And you're sailing around, you're trying to find these things. And I think thematically it really works. And I also think having the three different, completely disparate styles of play in the three, I think is very satisfying. I really, really think that works well. I also, and I've already somewhat referenced this, I think the way the captaincy works is very, very good too. I love that you play that first game and then someone's going to wind up being captain based on who did the best. And then from there, they're going to try to hold on to that. And as long as you're keeping people happy, you're going to wind up staying captain. But there's always that thing there of like, pirates, and so they might mutiny. And I think the way the mutiny works is actually very clever. I didn't talk about it, and it's not something that I've experienced really because, well, I was playing most of the solo, but I love that your currency for that is your fame. You're basically out there trading on your fame to get people to continue to support you. And I really do think that is clever. I think it works well. More importantly, I think it is quick. The mutinies are quick. You have tough decisions, but they go by quickly. And I really like that. And as a reward, the captain's going to get a little more money and they get to make the choices. So when you're sailing, they get to choose where you actually go. I think that works really, really well. Again, very thematic, very satisfying. I also think that, speaking of the adventure phase, there's a very good level of complexity. I think it's just about right. This is not like a Dungeon Universalis that has a rule for everything. It's not even like a Madara that has a rule for almost everything. But there's enough rules that are interesting. Right? We're not dealing with facing and stuff, but we are dealing with, you keep hitting someone with the same arm, and that arm is going to get a little tired. Or if you are using your offhand, that's a little bit harder. I didn't talk about it in the video, but if you get knocked out and when you get revived, you might get a permanent injury and you don't have a hand anymore. So now you got to go get a hook, and you can go get a hook. You can lose an eye, get an eye patch. You can lose a leg and get a peg leg. That's great. And the rules are there for it. And they're simple enough that when it comes up, you can do it really, really like that. I love the way the exploration works, where you're kind of pulling out the tiles and you kind of have an idea what's going to be there, and that's pushing along the speed of, that's pushing along kind of the end game of the adventure phase, and as it goes further and further, it gets harder and harder. I just think all of that works really, really well. I've already said I really think the port phase works fantastically all around. I think that is a wonderful phase, easy to understand, easy to play. Then, as I mentioned before, I think the voyage phase, I really do enjoy that kind of worker placement aspect to it. I really, really find that to be a lovely kind of downtime in between adventure phases. You're still chucking some dice and doing some stuff, but it's got a lovely Euro vibe in the middle, which I really do enjoy. Also, I would be remiss if I didn't say that the AI is pretty darn easy to manage, it's pretty easy to understand, and it's not smart, but it's smart enough to where I think it actually works pretty darn well. The last things I'll say is I think the story beats, and I haven't completed the campaign, but the story beats so far, I think they work pretty well, along with most of kind of the random encounters that you're getting. Like the random encounters that you get in the voyage phase, I think they work pretty darn well. And to the point to where, usually it's not good. They're usually not a good thing that's happening to you, so it's going to kind of push you along, make you move on to get off the water and onto an island, but I think it works pretty well, and all the things that you can do, again, are thematic and satisfying. You can go explore this island, see what you find, get supplies. You can raid a ship, you can sink a ship, you can bury treasure. It just, I think, works really well in the sense of what it is you're trying to do and trying to get that full pirate vibe. And then, as I said, the story beats the actual story, and the way that you're flipping and getting little bits and pieces as you're going through each adventure phase, again, I also think those work pretty well enough to where I want to know where the story's going. So what are my quibbles with the game? And this is where I'm really going to nitpick a lot here. So, as I've mentioned several times as I've talked about this game, the biggest issue of this game was the rules, and how the voyage phase was pretty much unplayable. And so I want to start there. The game is playable. 100% it is playable. That is been fixed to a point. I will also say the rules are not great. There were moments that I struggled. There is stuff that's still not in the rules. And a lot of it is stuff that, well, okay, you can figure it out. But I don't want to have to figure it out. I feel like the rules really needed another pass. For example, in the adventure rulebook, it mentions in some places that there's extra abilities that if you have more than 3 characters out there that get activated on the bad guys, which makes sense. But it doesn't actually say that it also boosts some of their stats, which I assume it does, but I don't know if it actually does that. I also don't know, do allies count as characters? Again, it makes sense to me that they do, but maybe they don't. I don't know. Also, when you're doing the exploration of the tiles, in the campaign book it says you're going to use these tiles. Well, it's not always clear what are the actual tiles that you need. In one of the adventures, I pulled out all the tiles I thought I needed. I was wrong. I didn't need half of those tiles that I pulled out. Why they were there, I don't know. Same thing in the first one. It told me to do stuff, and logic stated that obviously this is what you do when you finish that. But again, it didn't actually say that anywhere. And so while with the adventure phase, it is playable and it wasn't hard, and it was pretty easy for me to figure out, there's moments where I had to stop and figure it out. And so it's just a little bit of a miss there. The port phase, I think, is really, really clean. The way that goes, I have no issue with that. There's some places here and there where the terminology is not the same. Like it'll say rowdy on one space, it'll say brawler in another space. So again, easy to figure out, but for the most part, pretty darn clean. Though really, if you're here and you knew about this, you want to know about the voyage phase. And the voyage phase, which was unplayable, it's now playable. It is still rough. It is a rough phase, and I was able to do it. I still had to go and print out the kind of fan-made summary of the voyage phase, which when I took that, and it's available on the Skull Tales website, but when I took that and the other one, put them together, okay, I was able to get through it. Very few questions. And I know a lot of the questions that I had for the voyage phase are actually somewhere in there, but it's not organized in a way that makes it easy. Again, I'm going to keep saying this. It's playable. It's playable. But it's hard to find things. For example, I could not for the life of me find, where do you start? The answer is you will start, some of the adventure phases will say start at this island, but otherwise you start at the big island in the middle. And I feel like I read that somewhere. And the designer told me that when I sent an email, but I can't find it again. Anywhere in the rules, I can't find it. So it's just little things like that that make the voyage phase, the first couple times you do it, just a challenge. You really have to put in the work to figure out how to play it. And the tools are there, and you can do it, but it's harder than it should be. And that's why I'm spending so much time on this right now, because it's harder than it needs to be to get through the voyage phase. It just isn't quite there. And part of that, I think, is the game lacks all the player aids that I think it needs. It has some really good player aids for what type of actions you can do in the adventure phase and what you can do in each of the places in the port and what the actions are that you can do in the port phase. And they're actually very good player aids. But it needs player aids that say, this is the order of operations for each phase. You do this, then you do this, then you do this, then you turn the clock up 1 here, and then it's nighttime. Now you have to feed. If you can't feed, this happens. It just needs like those little player aids, and they're not there. Along with things not being there, the rule books talk multiple times about using your record sheet. Use the record sheet. Record this, record this. There is no record sheet. The only way you can get a record sheet, go to the website and download it. Is that hard? No. Was it easy enough to find when I asked? Yes. Was it hard for me to print out? No. Should I have to print out something that is clearly called out in the rule book that you need to have to play the game? That is not excusable to me. It's just not. And along with that, the insert is a miss. Like, I never talk about inserts, but this is the insert that you're getting. I had to make little paper pulls so I can get the bottom tiles out of the insert because I don't have fingernails. And so some of the cards, I just was going crazy, just digging and trying to get these cards out. And with the amount of good inserts out there, it's a real shame that this one I had to make little paper pulls, or I can throw away the whole insert. And if I wind up getting some of the expansion material, I might do that so I can just kind of put everything in there. And then kind of continuing on with some of the things that I think are just missing in there. There's not enough doors. So the game comes with all these little door tokens, and they're really cool little tokens. There's a closed door, you flip it over, it's an open door. But in one of the games that I played where I had all the village tiles out, there literally were not enough doors for what the book showed me. And that's fine, like I get it. I opened a door, I just take it off and move it. But if that's the case, why do you flip them over? Give me enough doors. Now, along the same route, in the voyage phase, the enemy ships and stuff, there's a thing that happens between when the ship is neutral and when it is aggressive. And these ship tiles are just single tiles. And they're double-sided exactly the same. Why doesn't one side have something that shows me that the ship is now aggressive? That would just make the quality of life that much better. And along with that, I think some of the ship tiles that you have for the voyage phase, they look very, very similar. I know for myself personally, I'm going to pull some little ship minis from some other games that I have and just kind of probably start using those. But again, a quality of life miss in this production of the game. And then the last thing, speaking of kind of the quality of life misses, is in the rules it has times where there are objectives that you have to do, and it has lots of times where it has a whole bunch of letters that are on the map. It says, okay, when you open this door you're going to look at J means turn to this thing. That's great. They should have tokens that say A, B, C, D, E, F, all of those things. Put them on the board just so you're not looking at the board, then looking at the map and saying, okay, well, this one's turned this way, let me turn that and figure that out. Because personally, my spatial stuff and like just putting things on tiles, it's really hard for me. And it was a little bit frustrating to where I found myself taking little dry erase chips I have, writing it on there and throwing it out. Same thing when it talks about there's a treasure chest at this spot, or there's a person you're going to talk to at this spot, or whatever. It has it clearly marked as like a big purple or blue or yellow X in the rule book. They don't give you tokens to do that. So pick your own thing and throw it out there. And so I'm focusing on all these little things that are pretty easy to fix on your own. And really, what are they? They're quality of life. But I think for a game that basically the complaints people had was quality of life and ability to do things easily, these are misses. These are just unforced errors that they're making, and it's a shame that it's not going to be changed between the funding of this when it happens and the next delivery. And hopefully, maybe if they do a third edition, that'll be changed. You can get an upgrade pack. I don't know. Now, with all of my time I just spent talking about quality of life stuff and the rule book and all of that, I actually only have one thing that I find to be a little bit of a bummer about the actual gameplay. And that is when you are in the voyage phase and you explore an island, it has a little card that you're going to look at and you're going to roll a couple dice that's going to tell you what you find and what happens to the various members of the crew that are going to go out and explore the island. It's actually pretty satisfying. I think it's satisfying, but there's not a lot of variety to it. And I think there's going to come a time when you're just going to say, well, I don't want to go explore the island. I should because it makes sense, but it just, I've done it enough. But there you have it, folks. That is Skull Tales Full Sail. I know I just spent a lot of time with quibbles, but I have to say, I like this game. I like it. I really enjoy this game. I want to play again. I want to play more. And I'm probably going to back the expansion stuff when it comes to GameFound. I think this is a game that, if I had to rank it somewhere, this is absolutely a top 20 dungeon crawl for me. 100%. You know, it was just the theme and all that. 100% top 20 dungeon crawl. Maybe top 15 dungeon crawl, to be honest. If there weren't all these unforced errors in there, this is a top 10. Maybe top 5. But they're there. And the amount of work you have to do to be able to just play the game, which I can do now, is a lot. It's a heavy lift. And it's something that I think that you should understand, that you're going to have to put in some work to really get the most out of this. Once you have done the work, you're going to have fun. You're really going to enjoy it, especially if you like this idea of the worker placement ship aspect for the sailing, and you like the way the head-to-head combat works. You're rolling the 2 dice against each other, comparing it to the agility. That kind of thing. If you like that combat and you like the way that works and you like the looting and you like this mutiny idea and the captaincy, like, it really, really, really is fun and really satisfying. It just has something that is holding this game back from being great. I rate this as a really good game. I really like it. I'm holding on to it. I'm going to play through this whole campaign. It's not great because of the quality of life issues that it has, and because of the misses still in the rulebook. And really that's it. I don't want to belabor the point. And so I hope this has been helpful for those of you that have been very interested in this game to really say, okay, what am I looking for? Is this what I'm looking for? Okay, here's the challenges this game has. Can I overcome those, or will I be frustrated? And I think if you can get through those challenges, and you're not going to be turned off by a little bit of frustration and a lot of time learning and having to print out the fan-made player aid for the voyage phase so you can kind of compare things, then I think you're really going to enjoy this game. So anyhow, there you have it, folks. That is Skull Tales Full Sail. This has been my longest video I've done in a very long time, and I think it simply has to be said that all this is in there, because that is the problem with the previous version. Is it better? 100%. Is it playable? 100%. Is it playable right out of the box? Yeah, it is. Are you going to have to occasionally make a choice and do something? Yeah, you are. But I'm okay with that, because it's real fun. And it's real satisfying once you get into it. And I think I've actually talked myself into backing the expansion stuff when it comes out. So anyhow, folks, there you have it. As always, if you found this video useful, please like, subscribe, share, maybe become a channel member. As always, thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.